Hi world, it's about 2:35, 2:45 in the afternoon on the 10th of April 2018. First of two videos today on world leaders. This one's on President Moon of South Korea, Moon Jae-in. No known birth time, and I'm not speculating because I don't know enough about the person to be able to give a qualified estimate. But he was born on the 24th of January 1953 in a small city called Guje, I don't know how to pronounce it, close to Busan in South Korea, making him an Aquarius with the moon in Taurus, as long as he was born before 6 p.m, at which time the moon moved into Gemini. But from what little I've seen of him, read about him, and observed in forms of pictures and observed of him talking, it seems to me that he probably does have the moon in Taurus, because he comes across as someone who's pragmatic, grounded, down to earth, and in touch with the real world in terms of material attitudes, as opposed to people like with the moon in Gemini, who are more verbal and more flighty, if you like, with their words. He seems very much as if he's strong, down to earth and grounded. The dominant factor in his chart is that he has a really strong square from Mercury at the end of Capricorn to Saturn conjunct Neptune at the end of Libra. It's fascinating that he's born so close to President Xi Jinping of China. There's only about 3 or 4 months between them. He's born just a little bit before President Moon, about 4 months before. With Mercury square Saturn in a horoscope, and it is pretty much exact in his chart. This is the chart of someone who is always born old, and they get younger as they get older. With Mercury square Saturn, anybody with Mercury square Saturn will know that when young, they go through periods of inhibition, shyness, reserve, inconfidence, and at least an unwillingness, if not an inability, to be able to project themselves verbally, intellectually into and onto the world. As they get older, post 40, they become more confident in themselves, and actually these are the people who will keep their marbles and their mobility until the day they drop, normally at least mid-80s, because they've got the kind of mental stability and mental structure to be always able to plan out what they're going to say next. Thing is, looking at the transits to President Moon's chart over the coming months, he is one of these people who is about to get hit rather hard in the short-term future. Now, I know that he has talks coming up with the North Korean government, and this is likely to impact on world politics. The war that we thought was coming between America and North Korea of a couple of months ago has now shifted. It seems that if there's going to be a war, it's going to be more orientated around the Middle East these days, yet again. But we'll come to that one another time. With President Moon, he's got the conjunction. First of all, he's just gone through Uranus in the sky opposite his Saturn and squaring his Mercury over this last year. So I don't know what's gone on for him in this last year, but I think he's really started to come out of himself finally now. Next year, 2019, he's going to have Uranus squaring his Sun. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to him over the coming year and a half, 2 years. I'd be surprised if he's still on exactly the same course and in the same position as he is now in 2 years' time. But what's really interesting is what's coming up in the short-term future. The Mars retrograde that's coming up, which is going to be the source of a lot of problems for a lot of people, and is going to be impacting from mid-May onwards, is going to land on top of his Sun around mid-late May. And this is the start of a 4-month process. Mars will be very close to his Sun, within 5 degrees, from early mid-May through to mid-September of this year. Meaning that on the one hand, he's going to have a great deal more vitality, enthusiasm, drive, motivation, but also he's going to be a bit more accident-prone, clumsy, impulsive, dynamic and projective, yes, hopefully assertive, but also possibly attracting energies of confrontation and aggression. So there are issues here, and if I were advising him, I'd be saying to him, well, any talks that you have over the period between now and September, you have to go in there and act from a cold perspective, not a hot. If you get angry or let your buttons get pushed, you're going to say or do something you later regret. Whereas if you go in there and be detached and impersonal and think about what you're going to say before you say it, you will say the right thing. This doesn't only apply to him, of course, it applies to everybody born from about, say, the 22nd through to the 27th of January. But more on that one another time. There you go. That's my take on President Moon Jae-in.